There was a boy who lost everything before he was 10 years old. His father was poisoned by enemies. His family was abandoned in the cold wilderness. They had no food. They had no shelter. They had no one to protect them. Most people would have given up. Most people would have died. But this boy did not give up. He became the greatest conqueror the world has ever known. This is the story of Genghis Khan, a man who rose from nothing, a man who united the most divided people on earth, a man who built the largest land empire in all of human history. But before the empire, there was a child, a frightened, hungry, and lonely child living on the cold steppes of Mongolia. And that child's story is where everything begins. The land of Mongolia is not an easy place to live. The winters are brutal. The winds cut through you like a knife. The summers are dry and harsh. The grass stretches in every direction as far as the eye can see. The people who lived there were nomads. They moved with their animals. They followed the seasons. They lived in round felt tents called jars. They cooked over open fires. They rode horses before they could walk properly. Life was hard, but it was the only life they knew. In the year 1162, in a small camp beside the Onon River, a baby boy was born. His father was a tribal chief named Yesugei. His mother was a woman named Hoilun. She was strong, brave, and wise. She was the kind of woman who never showed weakness, even when she was afraid. When the baby was born, Yetsuge held something in his hand. He had just won a battle against a warrior from an enemy tribe named Temujin, and so he named his son after that defeated enemy. He named the boy Temujin. No one in that camp knew that this tiny baby, crying beside the cold river, would one day change the entire world. Temujin grew up in the open grasslands. He learned to ride horses. He learned to shoot arrows. He learned to survive in the wild. He was fast. He was strong for his age. And he watched everything around him with sharp, serious eyes. His father was respected by many people. Yasuge was not the most powerful chief on the steppe, but he was a man people listened to. When Temujin was about 9 years old, his father decided it was time to find a wife for him. This was normal among the tribes. Yasuge took young Temujin on a long journey across the grasslands to find a suitable girl. They traveled for many days. Finally, they came to the camp of a tribe called the Olkunut. Yasuge met a man named Dei Sechen, and Dei Sechen had a daughter. Her name was Bort. When Temujin saw her, something happened that he could not explain. She was calm. She was quiet. She had kind eyes that seemed to see far into the distance. He did not say much, but he remembered her. Dai Sechen agreed to the arrangement. Temujin would stay in the camp and work for Dai Sechen for a few years. This was the custom. The young man proved himself before the marriage. Yasuge agreed, said his goodbyes to his son, and turned his horse toward home. But on his way back, Yasuge stopped at the camp of the Tatars, an enemy tribe, to rest and eat. The Tatars recognized him. They were quiet, they were polite. They gave him food and drink, but they put poison in his drink. By the time Yasuge reached his own camp, he was dying. He called for Temujin to be brought home quickly. By the time Temujin arrived, his father was already gone. Temujin was 9 years old, and he had just lost his father. The moment Yasuge died, everything changed. The tribe no longer wanted to follow a dead chief's family. The leading elder, a man named Targutai, declared that Holun and her children were no longer part of the tribe. They were abandoned, left alone on the grasslands. Holun had several young children. Temujin was the oldest. They had no warriors to protect them, no animals except a few horses, no men to hunt for them. The world had turned its back on them. But Holun was not the kind of woman who sat down and cried. She gathered her children. She looked at each of their faces. She said, We are still alive. As long as we are alive, we can survive. And so they survived. They ate berries. They dug for roots. They caught small animals in the grass. They fished in the river with their bare hands. Holland taught her children how to find food where other people saw nothing. She taught them how to endure cold, how to sleep lightly and wake fast, how to move like shadows in the night. Temujin did not complain. He worked every day. He watched his mother's strength and it filled something deep inside him. But life was still dangerous. One day, a group of men from the tribe that had abandoned them came to take their horses. Their horses were their most valuable possession. Without horses, they were truly helpless. Temujin's older half brother refused to let the men take the horses. There was a struggle, and the men from the tribe killed him. Temujin was now the oldest male in the family. He was still a boy, but he was the man of the family now. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Something was growing inside Temujin. Not anger, not hate. Something quieter and stronger than that. A deep, burning certainty. A belief that he was meant for more than dying slowly on the cold step. He began to train himself. Every morning he practiced with his bow. Every day he rode horses until his legs ached. Every night he lay awake and thought about the future. He watched people, he listened. He began to understand things about human nature that most people his age could not see. He saw that the tribes of Mongolia were always fighting each other. They raided each other's camps. They stole horses and women. They killed for pride. They died for nothing. They were divided, weak, and constantly destroying themselves. He thought about this for a long time, but before he could change the world, something terrible happened to him. The men from Targutai's tribe found Temujin. They captured him. They put a heavy wooden board around his neck and his wrists called a kang. It was designed to humiliate prisoners. It was painful, heavy, and made it almost impossible to eat or sleep properly. They took him back to their camp as a slave. Temujin was a prisoner. He was a boy wearing chains. He was surrounded by enemies, but his mind was still free. He watched. He waited. He spoke carefully to certain people in the camp. He showed respect even to those who mistreated him. He learned who could be trusted. He learned who was unhappy under Targutai's rule. One night, a kind family helped him escape. A man named Sorkanshira risked his own life to help Temujin. He hid him in a cart full of wool. Later, Temujin slipped away into the darkness. He ran, he hid, he swam across a river in the cold night, and he made it back to his family. When he arrived, exhausted and half starved, his mother held him. She did not say much, she just held him, and that was enough. Temujin was now a teenager. He had survived abandonment. He had survived starvation. He had survived captivity. He was still alive, and he was ready to begin building something. He remembered Borte. He traveled back to Dei Sechen's camp. He had nothing to offer except himself. But Dei Sechen was a wise man. He saw something in Temujin that others missed. He saw a young man with fire in his eyes and iron in his spine. The marriage took place. Bote became Temujin's wife. Bote's father gave them a gift. It was a beautiful dark sable fur coat. It was a valuable and luxurious thing in those days. Temujin looked at that fur coat and had an idea. He took the coat to a powerful warlord named Togrul, the Khan of the Karait tribe. Togrul had been an old ally of Temujin's father. Temujin presented the fur coat as a gift. He spoke to Togrul with respect and intelligence. He reminded Togrul of the friendship between their families. He asked for Togrul's protection and alliance. Togrul was impressed. He agreed. This was the first political move of Temujin's career, and it showed something important about who he was. He did not just fight with weapons. He fought with his mind. He understood people. He understood loyalty. He understood that a well chosen word at the right moment was more powerful than an army. His reputation began to grow. Young warriors started to come to him, men who were tired of the constant tribal wars, men who wanted something better, men who saw in Temujin a leader who was different from the others. One of the first and most important of these men was a young warrior named Jamuka. Jamuka was smart, brave, and charismatic. He and Temujin had known each other as children. They had been blood brothers once, performing the old ritual of mixing blood and swearing eternal loyalty. They reunited now as young men. They rode together, they fought together, they shared everything. For a time, they were inseparable. But beneath the friendship, there was a difference in vision, a difference in how they saw the world. Jamuka believed in the old ways, the system of tribes, noble bloodlines above everything, the strong ruling the weak, the same system that had always existed on the steppe. Temujin believed in something different. He believed that loyalty and merit should matter more than blood. He believed that a brave warrior from a low family should be rewarded the same as a warrior from a noble family. He believed that the tribes needed to stop fighting each other and become one people. These two ideas could not live together forever. Eventually, Temujin and Jamuka parted ways. Some of Jamuka's followers chose to go with Temujin. The split was quiet, but both men knew that one day it would become something much louder. Temujin's following grew. He was generous to those who were loyal. He was fair. He gave rewards based on skill and courage, not on family name. This was a revolutionary idea on the Mongolian steppe. It attracted warriors from all over. He also made powerful enemies. The Tatars, the tribe that had poisoned his father, had always been a threat. The Merkits, another tribe, had their own grudge against Temujin's family. And then there was Jamuka, watching from a distance with complicated feelings. One night, disaster struck. A group of Merkit warriors attacked Temujin's camp while he was away. They took Borte. They carried her off into the night. When Temujin learned what had happened, something inside him went very quiet. Not the quiet of defeat, the quiet of total focus. He went to Togrul. He asked for help. Togrul agreed. He also went to Jamuka. Even though they were no longer together, Jamuka also agreed to help. This moment showed the power of Temujin's character. Even those who were drifting away from him still respected and cared for him. They gathered a large force. They attacked the Merkit camp at night. The raid was fast and devastating. The Merkits were scattered, and in the confusion and the darkness, Temujin rode through the camp calling one name. Bort! Bort! And then a figure ran toward him from the darkness. He leaped from his horse. He held her. She was shaking. He was shaking. She was alive. He held her for a long time and did not speak. Later, Borte gave birth to a son. They named him Jochi. The question of who the boy's true father was would follow the family for generations. But Temujin never rejected Jochi. He raised him as his son. He loved him as a father loves a child. This act alone said something important about Temujin's character. He did not punish Borte for what had happened. He did not blame her. He held his family together. In the years that followed, Temujin continued to build his power. He fought battles. He won alliances. He made enemies pay for their crimes and rewarded those who were loyal. He fought the Tatars who had killed his father. He defeated them completely. And then he did something that shocked everyone. Instead of killing all the surviving men and taking the women and children as slaves, as was the custom, he made a different choice. He kept those who could be useful. He integrated them into his growing confederation. This was not weakness, this was strategy, and it was also something deeper. Temujin was building a new kind of people, not a tribe, not a confederation, a nation. He understood something that no leader before him had fully grasped. The constant cycle of raiding, killing, and revenge was destroying the Mongolian people. The tribes would never be truly powerful as long as they were tearing each other apart. Only unity could make them great, but unity could not be forced by words alone. It had to be won through battle. Temujin fought many battles in the years that followed. Each victory brought more people under his banner. Each defeat taught him something new. He was not a perfect warrior, he lost sometimes. He made mistakes. There were moments when it seemed like everything might fall apart. One such moment came at a place called the Battle of Kalakaljit Sands. Jamukha had formed a powerful alliance against Temujin. The battle was brutal. Temujin was defeated and forced to retreat. He sat in his camp that night with his remaining followers. Some had been captured, some had been killed, the fires were low, the mood was dark. Temujin sat quietly for a long time. Then he said, "Every defeat is a teacher. What did we learn today?" He went around the camp. He talked to his commanders. He asked questions. He listened carefully. He did not blame others. He did not despair. He thought. And from that defeat, he drew lessons that would make him stronger in the battles to come. This was one of his greatest gifts, the ability to learn, the ability to adapt. Most leaders stopped learning the moment they tasted success. Temujin never stopped learning, even in victory and especially in defeat. He also had another great gift. He knew how to find extraordinary people and give them the freedom to be extraordinary. One of those people was a man named Jebe. Jebe had once fought against Temujin. In battle, Jebe had shot an arrow that wounded Temujin's beloved horse. After the battle, when Jebe was captured, he stood before Temujin and confessed what he had done. He did not hide it. He did not beg for mercy. He simply said, "I shot your horse. If you kill me, that is your right. If you spare me, I will fight for you with everything I have." Most chiefs would have executed him on the spot. Temujin made him one of his greatest generals. JB became one of the most brilliant military minds in the Mongol Empire. He led armies across half the world. The trust Temujin placed in him was repaid 1,000 times over. This was how Temujin built his empire, not just through force, through trust, through giving people a chance to become something more than they had ever been. His army was different from any army in the world. He organized his warriors not by tribe, but by units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. This was called the Arban system. A man's loyalty was to his unit and to the great Khan, not to his clan or family. This broke the old tribal bonds that had always caused fractures in Mongolian armies. He promoted men based on skill and courage. A man from a conquered tribe could rise to be a general if he was talented and loyal. A noble who showed cowardice could lose everything. Rank meant nothing without performance. He created the fastest communication system the world had ever seen. Relay stations were built across the steppe with fresh horses waiting. A message could travel hundreds of miles in a single day. He valued knowledge. He sought out scholars, engineers, and craftsmen from every people he encountered. He wanted to know how other civilizations built walls, made weapons, stored food, and governed people. He was always learning. And then came the year 1206. By this time, Temujin had united almost all the tribes of Mongolia under his banner. The last major rival was Jamukha himself. Jamukha had been a thorn in Temujin's side for years. His armies had clashed with Temujin again and again, But Temujin's forces were now overwhelming. Jamukha's supporters began to melt away. Some surrendered. Some joined Temujin. Finally, Jamukha was captured, not by Temujin's warriors, but betrayed by his own men who hoped to win favor with the rising conqueror. When they brought Jamukha before Temujin in chains, Temujin looked at his old friend for a long time. He executed the men who had betrayed Jamukha. He said, "A man who betrays his own lord cannot be trusted. They are not loyal to me. They are only loyal to their own survival." Then he looked at Jamukha. They had been brothers once. They had shared food from the same bowl. They had slept under the same sky. They had dreamed together as young men. Temujin offered Jamukha his freedom. He offered him a place of honor at his side. Jamukha refused. He said, "There cannot be two suns in one sky. One of us had to rise and one had to fall. You have risen. I am not ashamed. Let me die with honor." Temujin granted his request. He had Jamukha executed without the shedding of blood, which was the highest form of death among the Mongols. It was a mark of deep respect. Afterward, Temujin sat alone for a while. No one disturbed him. When he emerged, his face was calm and composed. But those who knew him well saw something else in his eyes, a depth of feeling that words could not reach. Not long after, on a great open plain, all the tribes of Mongolia gathered. It was a Kurultai, a great assembly. The leaders of every tribe came together. The sky was wide and blue above them. The grassland stretched in every direction. And there, before all the people, the leaders knelt before Temujin. They gave him a new name, Genghis Khan. It meant something like universal ruler, the ruler of all people under the eternal blue sky, the boy who had been abandoned on the frozen steppe, the boy who had worn a wooden prisoner's board around his neck, the boy who had caught fish with his bare hands to survive. That boy was now the ruler of all the Mongolian people. His mother Hoilan was there that day. She stood and watched as her son was raised to the highest position in the land. No one spoke of what she was feeling, but it was written on her face, pride, deep, burning, wordless pride. Genghis Khan did not rest. The unification of Mongolia was not the end of his vision. It was only the beginning. To the south lay China. To the west lay the great kingdoms and empires of the ancient world. Beyond those mountains and deserts lay peoples and cities that the Mongolians had only heard of in whispered stories. He knew that his people needed more than the steppe could offer. They needed trade, they needed resources, they needed security from the powerful empires that surrounded them. And so the campaigns began. He first turned his attention to the Xi-Xia kingdom in northwestern China. The Xi-Xia were a powerful state with walled cities, standing armies, and sophisticated defenses. Every other conqueror who had tried to attack walled cities from the steppe had failed. Walls were the ancient answer to the fast-moving cavalry of the grasslands. But Genghis Khan was not like every other conqueror. He studied the problem. He sought out engineers from conquered peoples who understood siege warfare. He had catapults built. He had battering rams constructed. He trained his warriors to work in coordination with these weapons. He also used psychology. He sent messengers to cities before he arrived. The message was always the same. Surrender and you will be treated with respect. Your merchants will trade freely. Your scholars will be protected. Your people will live. Resist and we will destroy everything. Some cities surrendered. Some did not. Those that surrendered were absorbed into the growing empire. Their people continued their lives. Those that resisted were dealt with decisively. Genghis Khan understood that mercy shown to those who surrendered made the next city more likely to open its gates, and the swift destruction of those who resisted made the one after that even more willing to negotiate. It was ruthless logic. But it was logic. The Shishya eventually submitted. Then came the Jin dynasty, the powerful rulers of northern China. This was a much larger and more complex challenge. The Jin had millions of soldiers, they had vast resources. They had been building defenses for generations against the nomads of the north. But Genghis Khan did not attack in the way the Jin expected. His generals like Jebe were masters of movement. They moved their armies with astonishing speed. They would appear in one place, strike and vanish before the jinn could respond, then appear somewhere completely different. The jinn were always reacting, always behind, always confused. Gradually, the Mongol armies chipped away at the jinn defenses. City after city fell. Province after province was taken. The Jin emperor was forced to negotiate. But Genghis Khan was not finished with the Jin. He never made a peace he did not intend to keep, and he never forgot an insult or a betrayal. When the Jin violated their agreement and tried to escape to the south, Genghis Khan resumed the war with devastating force. The campaign against the Jin would continue even after his death. While these campaigns were happening in the east, something occurred in the west that would lead to one of the most massive military operations in history. A powerful ruler named Shah Muhammad II controlled the Khwarezmian Empire. This empire stretched across Central Asia and covered much of modern day Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia. It was wealthy, sophisticated, and powerful. Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan of hundreds of merchants to the Shah's territory. He wanted trade, he wanted peace. The caravan was massive, a sign of goodwill and commercial ambition. The Shah's governor had the entire caravan arrested. The merchants were killed, their goods were stolen. When Genghis Khan heard this, he went very quiet. He sent 3 ambassadors to the Shah demanding justice. The Shah had one ambassador killed and the other to humiliate. This was not just a crime. This was a declaration of war against the universal principle of protected merchants and diplomats. It was a direct insult to Genghis Khan in front of all his people. He went alone to a hilltop. He prayed to the sky for 3 days and 3 nights. Those who were nearby heard him speaking quietly in the darkness. He was asking heaven if what he was about to do was just. When he came down from the hill, his decision was made. He assembled the greatest army he had ever built. He called warriors from across Mongolia and from all the peoples he had already conquered. He gathered engineers, logistics experts, and intelligence gatherers. And then he moved west. The campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire was overwhelming. The Mongol armies split into several forces. While one group struck from the north, another appeared from the south. Another came through the desert where no army was expected. The Shah was constantly surprised. His armies were never in the right place. His cities fell one by one. The great city of Samarkand, one of the most beautiful and wealthy cities in the world, surrendered. Its scholars, craftsmen, and artisans were spared, and many were taken into Mongol service. Others were not so fortunate. The Shah fled. He became a fugitive in his own empire, pursued by 2 of Genghis Khan's greatest generals, Jebe and Subutai. They chased him across mountains and deserts. He died alone on a small island in the Caspian Sea, abandoned by everyone. His empire was gone. Jebe and Subutai did not stop there. They continued west with a smaller force, conducting what would become one of the greatest reconnaissance missions in military history. They rode through the Caucasus Mountains. They defeated the Georgian army, once considered the finest cavalry in the Christian world. They swept through the steppes north of the Black Sea, and defeated a coalition of Russian princes at the Battle of the Sid River. Then they returned to the east, bringing information about the lands, peoples, armies, and geography of the entire Western world. Genghis Khan now knew more about the world beyond his borders than any conqueror before him. Through all of this, he continued to govern. Building an empire was not only about winning battles, it was about creating systems, law structures. He created the Great Yasa, a law code that applied to everyone in the empire, rich and poor, noble and common, Mongol and conquered alike. The laws were strict, but they were the same for everyone. He declared religious tolerance throughout the empire. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, shamanists, all could practice their faith freely. This was revolutionary for the time. Most empires crushed the religions of the peoples they conquered. Genghis Khan protected them. He was curious about all religions. He invited representatives of different faiths to debate and discuss their beliefs in his presence. He created a system of passports that allowed merchants to travel freely across the entire empire. This sparked an era of trade and exchange that historians later called the Pax Mongolica, the Mongolian Peace. The Silk Road, the great network of trade routes connecting east and west, flourished under Mongol protection as never before. He created schools. He promoted literacy. The Mongolian people had no writing system before Genghis Khan. He commissioned the creation of one using a script borrowed from another culture and adapted for Mongolian. He was building something that would outlast him. But even the greatest conqueror is still a human being. And Genghis Khan was surrounded by the same human realities that touch every person. His family was complicated. His oldest son, Jochi, was always under the shadow of that question about his birth. Genghis Khan loved him, but the question hung in the air between them. Jochi was a capable commander, brave and intelligent. But he knew that some of his father's followers did not fully accept him. His second son, Chagatai, was fierce and capable but proud and rigid. He often clashed with others. His third son, Ogedei, was warm, generous, and politically skilled. Genghis Khan saw in Ogedei the qualities that a future leader would need. His fourth son, Tolui, was a brilliant military commander, perhaps the greatest of all his sons in pure battlefield skill. Genghis Khan spent years thinking about who would come after him. How would he hold together an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the edges of Europe? How would he prevent his sons from tearing it apart after he was gone? He held great councils with his sons. He spoke to them honestly. He told them about his own failures. He told them about the mistakes he had made. He told them that the empire was fragile. That unity was its greatest strength and division was its greatest enemy. One story tells of him gathering his sons when they were young. He gave each of them a single arrow and told them to break it. They did so easily. Then he bound several arrows together and told them to break the bundle. None of them could. He said, "Alone you are nothing. Together you are unbreakable." This lesson would echo through the Mongolian imperial family for generations. In his later years, Genghis Khan was often in the saddle, always campaigning, always moving. The last great campaign of his life was against the Shishya, who had rebelled against Mongol authority while he was fighting in the west. He was older now. His body carried the marks of decades of hard living and hard fighting. But his mind was as sharp as ever. The campaign against the Shishya was going well when Genghis Khan was hurt. Some accounts say he fell from his horse during a hunt. Some say he was wounded in battle. Whatever the cause, he was injured seriously. He continued to direct the campaign from his bed. He refused to stop. He refused to go home. He knew he was dying. He called his sons to him. He spoke to them one final time. He told Ogedei that he would be the next great Khan. He told all his sons to be united. He spoke about the empire and what it meant. He spoke about the responsibility of power. Then he said something that people have remembered for 800 years. He said, I have conquered a great empire, but I have not been able to conquer death. He died in the summer of 1227. He was somewhere between 60 and 65 years old. His body was carried back to Mongolia by a secret route. Those who saw the procession were killed to keep the burial place a secret. To this day, no one knows exactly where Genghis Khan is buried. His wishes were fulfilled. Ogedei became the great Khan. The empire continued to expand for many decades after his death. His grandsons would push the Mongol borders into Poland, Korea, Vietnam, and deep into the Middle East. The empire he built would eventually cover more land than any empire before or since. But the numbers and the maps tell only part of the story. The real story is about a boy who was left to die on a frozen steppe and chose to live. A boy who watched his mother dig for roots and berries in the snow and learned that strength is not about what you have. It is about what you refuse to give up. A prisoner who wore a board around his neck and never stopped planning his future. A young man who built loyalty one person at a time, not through fear alone, but through respect, fairness, and vision. A leader who learned more from his defeats than from his victories. A man who looked at a world broken into 1,000 fighting pieces and dared to imagine something whole. Let us think about some of the moments in this story that say the most about who Genghis Khan really was. Think about the moment when he found Borte in the market camp. He had just won a battle. He had just shown his military power to all his followers. And yet, in that moment of victory, he leaped from his horse and ran to his wife. Not the warrior, not the conqueror, just a man who loved his family. This was always true of him. Beneath the conquests and the campaigns, there was a human being, a man who remembered every kindness done to him. The family of Sorkan Shira, who had helped him escape captivity as a boy, was honored and protected for the rest of their lives. He never forgot. Think about the moment with Jebe, the warrior who had wounded his horse. Any other ruler might have executed him or enslaved him. Temujin saw a warrior with courage and honesty and gave him a chance. And that choice helped build the greatest cavalry force in history. Think about the farewell to Jamukha. Two men who had been blood brothers as children, who had shared a vision and then grown into different visions. Their final meeting was not a moment of hatred, it was a moment of deep, complicated grief. Two paths that had to separate, ending with a last act of honor between old friends. Think about the 3 days on the hilltop before the Western campaign. A man who held more power than almost any human being in history, going alone to ask for guidance, not from his generals, not from his advisors, from the sky, from something greater than himself. He was always aware that he was only one man, surrounded by something much larger. And think about those final words. I have conquered a great empire, but I have not been able to conquer death. There is wisdom in that sentence that goes beyond the battlefield. It is a reminder that all human achievement, no matter how great, is temporary. What we build will one day pass. What we gather will one day scatter. The empires of the world all rise and all fall. What lasts is not the conquest. What lasts is the human story. The boy on the step. The mother who never stopped fighting. The friendships made and broken. The lessons learned in darkness. The courage to keep going when everything was against you. That is what lasts. Many historians have argued about Genghis Khan. Some focus on the destruction. the cities that fell, the lives that were lost, the pain that came with the expansion of the empire. These things were real. They cannot be ignored or erased. But the full picture is more complex. The world that existed before Genghis Khan was not a peaceful place. It was a world of constant local wars, petty tribal conflicts, raiding and counter raiding, ordinary people living in constant fear of the next attack. Genghis Khan did not invent violence. He inherited a violent world and navigated it with a ferocious and brilliant mind. And out of that navigation came something remarkable. For a period of history that scholars call the Pax Mongolica, the vast empire he created enabled trade, travel, and exchange of knowledge on a scale never seen before. Merchants traveled safely from China to the Mediterranean. Ideas, technologies, and cultures mixed and crossed in new ways. The Black Death, tragically, also traveled along these same trade routes, which shows that even great achievements can carry unintended consequences. Historians continue to argue. They will argue for a long time. But what cannot be argued is the sheer extraordinary arc of one human life. From the son of a small tribal chief abandoned in the wilderness to the ruler of the largest land empire in history, no shortcuts, no inherited armies, no divine birthright beyond what he believed the sky had given him. Just a mind that never stopped learning, a spirit that never accepted defeat as final, a will that bent the entire world to its vision. What can we take from this story? Not a model to follow in every detail. Times change. The methods of the step belong to that world, not ours. But the deeper lessons do not expire. The lesson that who you are is not determined by what you are born into. Temujin was born to a small chief and then abandoned. He had every reason to accept a small life. He refused. The lesson that your worst moments are not the end of your story. Losing your father, losing your tribe, being captured and humiliated, having your wife taken from you. Any one of these things might have broken another person. Temujin used each one to grow stronger. The lesson that real leadership is built on trust, not just force. He rewarded loyalty. He promoted talent. He punished betrayal. He built systems that outlasted him. He thought not just about tomorrow, but about the generation after that. The lesson that learning never ends. On the day he died, Genghis Khan was still directing a military campaign, still adapting, still thinking. He never believed he had learned everything. He was always the student, the lesson that the people around you matter enormously. He did not build an empire alone. Borte was his foundation. His mother shaped his character. His generals were extraordinary. His advisors were brilliant. He had the wisdom to find such people and the humility to listen to them. The lesson that your biggest enemy is not always outside you. The tribes of Mongolia were their own worst enemy, constantly destroying each other. The moment they stopped fighting themselves and united, they became unstoppable. This is true for individuals as well. Often the greatest obstacle is not the world around us. It is the internal divisions, the self-doubt, the temptation to give up. The lesson that what you build must be bigger than yourself. He spent enormous energy thinking about what would come after him. He was building not just for his own glory, but for his people and for the future. These lessons are as alive today as they were 800 years ago. You may never conquer an empire. Most of us will not. But we all face our own frozen steps, our own moments of abandonment, our own seasons of having nothing, our own wooden boards around our necks that feel impossible to escape. In those moments, remember the boy by the Onon River. Remember his mother's voice. We are still alive. As long as we are alive, we can survive. Remember that the greatest conqueror in history was once just a hungry, frightened child with no one to protect him. And remember what he chose to do with that. He chose to learn. He chose to build. He chose to keep going. One day, then another, until the world had never seen anything like him. He started with nothing and became everything. And so the story of Genghis Khan is not just history, it is a mirror, a reminder of what human beings are capable of when they refuse to be defined by their circumstances. When the world tells you that you are nothing, you have a choice. You can believe it, or you can ride. The step is wide. The sky is eternal and blue above it. And somewhere in the distance, there is always a horizon worth riding toward. Temujin rode toward that horizon every day of his life, and he changed the world forever. This is the story of Genghis Khan. Moral of the story. No matter how little you start with, how many times you fall, or how many people abandon you, the power to rise and build something great lives inside you. True leadership is built not on the fear you create, but on the trust you earn, the people you lift, and the courage you show to keep learning and keep going when everything is against you.